Welcome back. It's Dr. Jen Ferboni, better known as DocJenFit, your doctor of physical therapy, and I want to go over what you can do for hip bursitis. Two of the missing exercises you might not be thinking about when it comes to improving the sides of your hips. Now, we have a whole podcast that you can listen to. It's actually a video on YouTube all about hip bursitis. So we go into what exactly it is, if you've been diagnosed with it, what is the research currently saying, and what are some other exercises that are really going to help to support this overall picture of hip bursitis. So I highly recommend checking that out. Today I'm going to use this video to really go over the two pieces that I think are missing, both what you can do to improve functional mobility on the floor, and then what you can do to help support that mobility and gain strength while we're in standing. Because what I see a lot happening is that we usually people who have hip bursitis really good at moving side to side, not as good moving front to back. And so we need to improve our hip extension. And rather than just trying to dig into your hip flexor or doing passive hip flexor stretches, not bad, I want to understand how we can improve that functionally. So we're going to do what I call a single leg hip bridge, okay? And instead of just coming up and doing a bridge here, what you want to focus on is holding that opposite hip. So this is going to keep my pelvis in a stable position, and now I have to use my strength to push into as much hip extension as I have possible on this side, and then see if I can hold and how high I can go. So I'm going to press through my heel and lift without letting this knee come forward, because if that knee comes forward, I might compensate into my low back. So I want to make sure that low back stays out of the picture, and I'm just trying to tuck that tailbone under and lift as high as I can from that hip. Hold it 10 seconds if you can, and then lower it back down. See the other side. Hold that knee in place, and then tuck that tailbone under as you come up, pressing through that side as much as possible, and see how high you can go, pushing that foot into the ground, 10-second hold. What's great about doing a single leg exercise as well is that we're getting the inner thigh to work, the glutes, the hamstrings, everything kind of around to support that hip as we're improving that hip extension. This is what we need when we're walking forward. Yes, we're going to have some rotation and some side to side movement, but we want to make sure we have good movement going back. So getting strong here, starting with holds, is really a great place to start. I would usually recommend doing about 5 on each side of 10-second holds to start to improve that strength and stability in that area. And then we're going to take it to standing. So now an exercise I think is really crucial and important to add in is going to be a single leg deadlift. Now that's quite advanced, so before we get there, just think about doing a kickstand deadlift, B-stance deadlift, whatever you want to call it. We're going to have some support from your back leg. So prior to going into the full single leg deadlift, which a lot of people don't quite get that range of motion down correctly, so really making sure we got a good setup. So I'm going to have my back foot out at a diagonal from that heel. So it's kind of out where my other hip is, and it's going to be out to just support me. So I want a majority of the weight into that front leg, okay, into that stabilizing leg. Now, as I go, you want to think of this hip pushing back, okay? So sometimes I like to hold on to the weight with the opposite hand because it's really good feedback to be able to use the same leg with that hand. And as my weight is not going to go in front of me, it's going to go directly down my leg. As I shift this hip back, stop at about my shin area, push that foot down into the ground. And what you should feel is a lot of glute action happening. So I'm going to come down as much as I can, tolerate nice and slow, and then push straight down into the ground. You want to make sure that you're not hyperextending as we come up, because then we're just compensating into the low back. We're working on that flexion and extension here in a functional pattern. So that means that we don't want to be hyperextending from the low back. We really want the hip to be doing the majority of the work. So again, that is keeping the weight against you, drawing that hip back, making it heavy into that foot, and then pressing that foot down into the ground to stand up, okay? If you want to load that hip a little bit more, that's where you can take that weight onto the same side, shift that hip back in the same manner, lower, and then press it back up. And if you need a little bit more balance, assistance, you can always use it in both hands, okay? There's no one way to hold the weight. It's just whatever feels best on your body at the time. Then you can start to progress it into that single leg deadlift. So it's the same concept here. I'm keeping it really close to my body. I'm allowing this hip to come straight back, and I'm keeping that hip down and then coming back up, okay? So what you don't want to do here is allow that hip to come out to the side and open up and start to see that opposite glute. You want to make sure that hip stays straight back, that leg is carrying you straight back, nice and controlled, and then pushing down to stand up, okay? That's where we get that full range of motion. One last thing you can do to help build that strength and control around that hip is passing the weight. So I'm going to come down into that deadlift position, and then if I pass the weight back and forth, I'm now working, as you can see, on my balance and stability in that hip hinge position, okay? We want the ability to bend and extend that hip really nicely so that we take tension off the side of that glute and where that bursitis usually is. If you want more support on how to open up that mobility and take some tension off of that hip bursitis, I would really recommend the hip plan that we have available on Gen Health, where I take you through a daily plan that doesn't take more than 8 to 15 minutes a day, so you can maintain your workouts and keep getting strong within your body as you're improving it and reducing pain. Don't forget, if you love what you're learning, I have so much more in stock for you. So hit that subscribe button, check out the other videos I've done in the past, and leave any comments of any suggestions that you have for videos in the future. And I can't wait to help you feel incredible and amazing within your body.